You can raise your hand.
Great.
Seeing and hearing nothing. The motion to approve the House of Delegates meeting minutes from August 2nd have passed. Thank you, gentlemen,
Cool.
and ladies too.
Yep. So item 10 should be quick. Thanks for having me as your new secretary this year. So I'm still learning all the ropes, and so if I forget, if I miss something, I'm still trying to figure out where all the places are and organize them all. So so bear with me a little, but hopefully I've been doing everything that you need. And obviously, there's a lot fewer show clearances, which is usually a fairly big part of the job. So if you have any questions about that, you know, let me know. I can take it offline. Thanks.
Thank you, Glenn. John, can you address the House of Delegates with your treasurer's report?
Okay, Glenn, do you have those slides that
I have, yeah, the PDFs. Would you like me to show those? Let me grab those, and it takes just a second. Which one would you like me to show first?
we'll go with 2019 income statement, I guess.
Okay.
So hopefully everybody had a little bit of a chance to look at this beforehand. Basically, this is a summary of the expenses for the district for 2019. I will make a comment based on some feedback that I got at the last HOD meeting. I am presenting this for the entirety of the district, whereas last time I presented just the operating portion of the budget. So this does include all of the funds and the interest earned in those. And that way the income on the balance sheet and the income on the income statement will match. So basically in 2019, we showed a gain of about $6,900, I think, no, $6,500, $6,500. One caveat to that is it includes $7,700 of a grant from the county, Warren County in New York, for the district or the Western Convention to support the show that we did not have. So that money has been set aside to be used for a future Western Conference where we do have a show. So in reality, the operating portion of the budget was more like a $1,200 loss. But all in all, it was a reasonably successful financial year. If you show the balance sheet, Glenn.
For the whole year? Yeah, for last year.
2019, yeah. Yes. Okay, as you can see from the balance sheet, our total assets are about $192,000. 192,000 and change. The bulk of that is in the District Reserve Fund, the Almano Fund, and some of the other funds. We keep a relatively small amount in the operating budget. If you look down at the bottom, you can see the income of $6,400 that we showed on the income statement. If you look right above that at the minus 32,000, that basically is the cumulative profit or loss of the district since I initiated this accounting software, which started at the end of 2009. So basically over the last 10 years, we have spent about 26,000 more than we've taken in, which obviously is not sustainable over the very long term, but in light of a lot of things that have happened over those 10 years, it's not totally unreasonable. If you go to this year, either balance sheet or go income statement first.
Income statement first, okay.
As you can see, and probably should not be surprised by, there has not been a whole lot of activity in 2020. At this point in the year, we typically would have had an Eastern Regional, a Western Regional, a Sunrise Division contest, and we would be gearing up for and have both income and expenses already for Harmony College and Harmony Explosion Camp, which are not happening. So all of those things, we were able to recover any deposits and have not basically laid any money out for any of those things. And at the same time, we've taken in no income for them. So the activity that we have seen is basically dues and some minor miscellaneous things that have occurred from last year. And basically all the administrative travel is essentially Ed attending the midwinter and the meetings surrounding that. And then the balance sheet will show you that we've basically added another 44,000 and change to the income through that and have increased our assets as a result. So that's basically all I'll say about that. If there's anybody who has any questions, I will be glad to take them.
Okay, so I've got Murray as the first person. Murray Phillips. Here, I got you. You are unmuted, I think. There you go, Murray.
Yeah, I'm not Aaron Harris, so I was confused. It is my pleasure to install the officers of the Northeastern.
Oh, sorry, wait. Oh, I see.
So
Did you have questions about the treasury report? Sorry, my mouse is kind of freaking out on me.
okay, there was a hand up. Yeah,
There was a hand up, yeah.
the hand was from a previous discussion.
Okay, got you. And so, and Tom, you're fine with the treasury report? Not a question about it?
So a couple of questions, Glenn, is when you are asking for a vote, as you did in the previous agenda item, and you're asking us to raise hands, are you physically asking us to show you our hand?
No. I'm asking for the because I can't see everybody at the same time. Well, I guess I can, but it would be harder to see. If you have a question, then use the little blue raise hand button.
I understand. I'm just asking in terms of a protocol, how you actually want us to vote.
Yeah, we can either use the yes, no's. Often though, these are done through consensus. So if there's so generally we're doing it that way. We're kind of using small Robert's rules for consensus. But we can be a little more, if people want to try to use the yes, no's, that would be fantastic.
I'm not asking you to be any more formal. I'm just trying to understand. So what I'm understanding is if we have questions or objection to raise them, otherwise it's assumed consent.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you, John. Any other questions on that before we move on? If not, next
Do you need
item
a
on
motion
the,
to accept the treasurer's report?
yes, we just need to accept it.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Walt Lane, I second.
Great.
Any objections? Seeing or hearing none?
Sam, well, Sam has his hand up. Sam,
Sam?
Yes, I had my hand up. I was just wondering in the Treasury report on the balance sheet, there's a line that says equity, and it just caught my eye because it was quite a large number. What is that?
Okay, hold on a second. Let me make sure I understand the question.
I have it showing the 191,610.
Yeah.
Is that
Basically, the equity is the ownership of the business, if you will. It's the cumulative assets less the liabilities. So those are
Okay.
basically, if you look at the other side of it, that should be very close to the sum of all the funds that we have. The funds being the operating accounts, the district reserve, the Almano Fund, Hartford Fund, the Harmony Explosion Fund, the Judges Fund, and the NED Act Fund. So the sum of all of those, less anything we owe, is going to be what's left over and is the equity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
we have a motion that's been seconded. Any other discussion? Great. Ed, I'll let you do the honors.
Okay, the motion passes. I see no objections. Thank you, and thank you, John, for putting that together.
You're welcome.
Okay. I'd like to introduce everybody to Aaron Harris, our Chief Program Officer from the Society. Aaron and I have done a lot of work together over the last few years. I've gotten to know her pretty well, and she's a joy to work with. And so I asked her to come and address the board, basically just to tell everybody from the delegates exactly what's going on in Harmony Hall under these unprecedented conditions that we're all living with these days. She's always optimistic, and she'll be available for some questions afterwards. So, Aaron, if you take things away, I think Glenn will set you up here, right?
Yep, she's good.
Good. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Ed, thank you for inviting me to this. This is actually my first House of Delegates meeting for the spring 2020, and so I just felt really honored to be asked. I've been to the Northeastern District Fall Convention when it was in Portland, and honestly, I wanted to move there after I went because it was so nice. It was around Halloween, and I ended up doing a like a cemetery tour, which is kind of creepy, but it was super fun, and I just had a really good time, and I felt really welcome. So thank you all for your hospitality, and it's good to see a lot of familiar faces. So I don't want to ignore the big elephant in the room, is that we've got a lot of stuff going on. And I, first of all, just want to say that we're all going through it. And it's not any one of us. And one of the things I love about the barbershop community is how in trying times, it doesn't matter if it's one person in your chorus or your whole chapter, or people like friends and family and spouses of your chorus, that when hard times happen, we all find ways to pull together. And so we're feeling that, and we're seeing a lot of really cool stuff happen, just how quickly the different chapters across the organization have taken to Zoom. I mean, I don't know if you all are super tired of Zoom yet, but I'm such an extrovert that I'm like, please give me more of this Zoom. It's the only way that I can like virtually hug people. So I really enjoy it, and keep it up, keep doing what you're doing at your chapters. And so I didn't want to ignore that elephant in the room and just kind of go on to other stuff, and just know that I in this universal human experience that we're going through right now, I feel very connected to you all as barbershoppers. I also, just to pivot a little bit, I always like to think about passion and what we do with singing together as a long walk in the same direction. And boy, these past 3 or 4 months have been quite a long walk. I mean, in some ways it feels like time has just flown by. In other ways, it feels like it's crawling. I don't know if y'all feel the same way. So I tend to provide a lot of information really fast. So but I also don't want to do a slideshow presentation because that's not my style. So what I'm going to do is show you where you can find resources for your chapter right now, in order to be able to connect with your members, connect with each other, connect with your district, and make the most of this time that is like when we can't actually physically get together. So I'm going to share that stuff. And then, Ed, if it's okay with you, I'll just open it up for quick. I have 2 dogs, by the way. Luna, she's a tiny miniature pinscher, and she barks at the water bowl when she feels like it's going to attack her. So give me like 35 seconds to go over and tell her that it's not going to attack her, and I'll be right back.
Good reason not to own a dog.
It's very quiet at my house here in Hershey, Pennsylvania, everybody.
Get
Our
yourself a
tropical
dog.
fish don't bark at all.
The good news is nobody else has a dog that started to bark.
There you go.
Okay, I
John,
think
did you
she's
get all
okay
the
now.
skeletons out of your closet?
Okay, so now that the dog feels confident in her water drinking abilities, I think what I was saying was I'll share information, and then why don't we just open it up to Q&A? This is about y'all, so ask anything you want. I've been at BHS for 6 years now. I'm on the executive team, so I can answer pretty much any question you have, or if I don't know the answer, then I know who can help. So just let's make the most of the time. All right, oh, you disabled screen sharing. That's okay. You know what? We're gonna pivot. So this first resource that I am going to chat in the chat box if you all are able to pull that website up, this is where we are trying to centralize any resources that may be helpful to chapters during
There you
this
go.
time.
Now you can share. Sorry, I fixed it.
No worries.
Sharing is definitely better.
Okay. Can you see it? Okay,
Yes.
great. So this is just the landing page where we're trying to centralize some of the resources. Obviously, you all have your own resources too, but this is a quick reference if you want someplace to go and try to see what we have out there right now. We've obviously got the World Health Organization and the CDC and also Canadian resources. We want to make sure to be inclusive there. And so you can have kind of a quick access there. And that's what we've been looking at when making decisions around international and Harmony University are these resources. We also have our program announcements, but probably more importantly for you all are just some of the virtual activities that are going on. So have any of you all been to any of our free Fridays that we've been hosting?
Yep.
Cool, awesome. So we're doing that as just a way to provide some fun and engaging activities. You can go there and see the schedule of those events. I believe those are happening all the way through June. We also have this Harmonize at Home, Sing the Polecats, which makes a fun activity, especially for those who are just maybe getting started with barbershop, or even your family at home who's not really as a part of your course right now, but maybe they're interested in learning more. You can download these playlists and the songs, and obviously there's some apps that are here too that some of you all may already be familiar with on how you can virtually sing in a quartet. I'm going really fast. You all are already doing virtual meetings, but some instructional stuff on how to host virtual rehearsals. We're doing virtual chapter visits. So Joe Cerruti, Steve Scott, Nathan Ogg, Katie McDonald, like they are all going and visiting specific chapters based on whatever topic that chapter might be interested in. There's a sign up process for that. And as much as our people and staff members are able and willing and have the schedules to do so, we're trying to make those connections. So I invite you to look at that. We've got some podcasts too. hot off the press, literally an hour before I joined this call, and that's why I was a little bit late. Sorry about that, Ed. Let me chat this in the, I'll chat all of these in the chat so you have them as quick reference for your notes. But hot off the press, about an hour ago, we published this playlist. This is a produced, the webinar actually was like 3 hours long, which I will never sit through a webinar that's 3 hours. I just can't do it. But this was post-produced into different sections around COVID. This is a collaboration with the Barbershop Harmony Society, the American Choral Directors Association, Chorus America, and then several science organizations where the CEOs of those organizations, including Marty Monson, talked about the impacts of COVID on singing communities and looking specifically at the science and data. And this is something that we're obviously not scientists. I'm not trying to pretend to know anything about COVID in an intimate way. I work for a singing organization, but we felt like that was a need and something that was missing. And so that partnership with other singing organizations produced these resources that I would encourage you all, if that's something you're interested in, to share that with your chapter or look at it yourself. We'll obviously be having more conversations in the future, like what does this mean for fall conventions? You know, what does this mean for us? What does this mean for midwinter in New York City? And so we're all having these conversations, but I wanted you to know that that was there. This is just on our main website, just so that you all know that there are always free classes and tutorials. We get a lot of questions all the time about like, hey, what resources are available for my director? And a lot of you are, you know, perhaps paying your director right now, but not necessarily being able to get together. Or maybe some of you all don't have a director and you're trying to figure out what is that going to look like. And so we've got some free resources that are available here around chorus rehearsals or outstanding in front. Some great free resources there that can be shared with your people or your directors. And obviously they're not all for the directors, but that's a common one we get. And then we also have a pretty robust Harmony University online site. So if that is available at education, oh, I'm a terrible typist, by the way. education.barbershop.org. We are doing kind of like a Netflix for barbershop right now. This is not where you would find the free resources, but it is where you would find more in-depth classes. We have a whole learning path for directors that's made up of, you know, 20 different electives on directing. And a lot of people just don't know because we try to, you know, communicate as best we can, but there's so much going on. And honestly, during this time, it's more, I mean, we can't over communicate. So we're trying to do a better job of just making sure that these resources are known so that you all are able to find what you need during this time. And then I have a question. Ed, have you talked to the chapters or the board about the Q1 results from chapters in Northeastern?
We just received those, I think, within the last week or so.
Yes.
And I haven't had a chance to discuss it with the board yet. I'm sure David Patterson is well aware of that. No, I have not. I'm not seen that, other than a few people actually have looked at it and made some comments about it, but I haven't officially said anything.
Okay, well, I won't show that then, since you all haven't had a chance to discuss it as a board yet. But for everyone else, the idea, you all have been so great at being responsive to not only with the financial implications of what's going on with COVID, but just our general surveying of like, what are the needs and wants of you all as chapters. And so we used to do that sort of on an annual basis at the end of the year. And we haven't done the best job of turning that data back around to district leaders or to you all directly. And so we're trying to find ways to do that. And one of the ways that we're doing that is we sent out the survey in the first quarter of this year. And obviously a lot happened in the very end of that first quarter. But the data was then, based on everything that you all sent in, was given to the Northeastern District leaders to be able to say, okay, well, what does this mean for us in order to either improve our programs or even market what we have to maybe non-barber shoppers. So let me give you an example, just simplify it a bit. one of the things that was in the survey was, how many paid shows have you done? How many free shows have you done? And the number, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but I want to say the number of, let's say, paid performances was close to 200 by the Northeastern District in the first quarter. That sounds really high, so I would want to have a conversation with the board about, like, is that really it? Because then all the people that actually live in that geographic area now have a way, like the Northeastern District has a way to market that to people who are non-barbershoppers, to say, hey, and you all as chapters have a way to say, I'm part of the Northeastern District. I'm really proud of that because we've done X amount of performances. And it can become a marketing tool for you to find more people to say, hey, my chapter might be 25 guys, but I'm part of a network of the Northeastern District that's part of the Barbershop Harmony Society, and collectively we do X. And it's just a way to get people excited about what's going on with you all in your local communities. So that was a very much of a fire hose of information. So I will stop, Ed, and I hope that was helpful. And please let me know if you'd like me to talk about anything specifically besides that.
Thank you, Erin. I think we'll open up some questions from the delegates. Does anybody have anything they would like to ask Erin?
Well, I do have my hand raised. You're going to call on people?
Need to unmute yourself, Glenn.
I
I
do.
had-
Yeah, so Tom, you had your hand up first.
Okay. Tom O'Brien, Concord Coachman, New Hampshire. And excuse me. I just wanted to say that the survey did come at a very odd time. I wanted to just offer two observations. One is that the first quarter of the year is probably our slowest quarter from a performance standpoint. Secondly, I don't know how people counted singing Valentine's, which is this kind of multiple, effect of so if we have 3 or 4 quartets doing a dozen each, we did not count that as chorus performances at all. But that's a fairly intensive activity during that quarter. Just wanted to offer those two observations. One, usually the slowest quarter, and particularly this year, because we really came to a screeching halt, by the beginning of March. And secondly, those singing Valentines, which is a fairly significant effort on the part of quartets. And in our case, it's a chorus effort to field those quartets. We didn't really count those at all.
Dan or Erin, do you want to respond or?
I'll wait.
Okay, so Dan, you had a question?
Hi, Erin. My question's about mixed choruses, and how is the SBHS organizing them? Like, if I wanted to say, how many mixed choruses are there in NED? Is that something that's on the eBiz site? How many choruses are all mixed, male, female? Is that organized somewhere?
I don't think so, but let me look and see. I mean, in terms of like on the public member center site where you all log in, it would have been a report that we would have built on there, but I don't think it's on there. Is your question just to know how many mixed choruses are in NED?
Well, let's say that somebody comes to me and says, hey, I want to try to start a mixed chorus. And instead of me, we're just relying upon things that I know, like who did what, if there was already a registered place for these and organized in a certain way, it would be really easy to send somebody a list of places to talk to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We do have a search capability, and we do in Member Center have choruses identify what type of chorus they are. So if I'm doing just a public search of chapters and choruses on that site, then I could, based on the information you all put in that field, know whether or not that is a chapter that has auditions, is men and women, or just men or women. And that would have to be based on what the chapters put in that field. And then of
But
course,
what if a
we
chapter
have,
had two choruses? Is that separated that way too in there?
let me double check, Dan, because I'm not in Member Center as often as some of the staff members, just to see exactly how it looks. But I can verify that and look it up right now just to see how it looks when you log in. We've done, since it's a homegrown system, we've done a lot of development. So sometimes it, like 6 months ago or even 2 months ago, it might look a little bit different just because we're trying to, make sure it stays updated. So if you'll give me a second while we're going through this, I will pull up a screen for that.
Aaron, this is Alan Lamson. I can probably help because I did the search.
Good.
It is in Member Center. You can search all of the chapters and choruses in the Northeastern District, and it will tell you whether they're male, mixed, or female choruses. The same is true with the quartets. All the quartets are listed, and they tell you whether they're male, female, or mixed.
Thanks, Alan. But what about Manchester? You guys have a mixed and all guys.
Yeah, I believe it shows up as both. One is a K92A and one is a K92B.
So I'm just looking for myself for my own knowledge, just to see what it, see how it shows up in here now. And so, Alan, you were saying that this is just me I haven't even logged in yet, but I clicked on search chapters and this is where it takes me. So where do I go to find that?
You can see right there.
You got it where it says, go up above where it says search.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It says filter type. If you click on that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, then you can go by chorus name.
Or even the district search might give them
Oh,
that
the district
list.
search and do it by chorus name and search, and it'll give you all the choruses.
So Northeastern.
Love it. Yep.
Yeah, that's all of them. If you scroll down through,
Mm-hmm.
So there's two, yeah. So
Manchester has two, Mosaic and Silk City Chorus. So it shows there, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah, teamwork makes the dream work.
cool. Okay, next.
Just ask C and J. It's critical to us. So.
So next is Gerald.
Okay.
And
yeah, I had a similar question, and what you've just shown me is how to find out. But I'm wondering if the Northeastern District has done any sort of a report on the buy-in, or first of all, the understanding of having a second or third chorus in your chapter, and what was the uptake on that? It sounds like we got a couple. I think that the guys in my group and in the Maritimes here kind of think one-on-one, one chapter, one chorus, that's it. But the bylaws have been just changed, and you can have more than one. So my question was, has anybody in the Northeast or even across the society determined, did a report, see how this is going? What's the uptake on everyone in harmony?
Since that's two questions, one for the NED and then one for BHS, maybe someone from the NED board would like to address the population specifically there.
I guess I can address it from the perspective of the board of directors from the NED. We have not done any kind of formal reports. We haven't really done that. A lot of the information I receive is through the society. So if a chorus registers with the society as a competing group within a chapter, as happened in Manchester, we know about it. We know of other mixed choruses that have yet to decide whether or not they want to become affiliated with a chapter or with the Barbershop Harmony Society, and they're active and very good. So they're sort of feeling out and testing the water, so to speak. The way the bylaws are written now, there's no reason for a chapter not to be able to sponsor or have two competing units or performing units, one all male, one all female. We have chapters that have gone to say that the performing unit for the X chapter is going to be all male, but we're going to accept women into our chapter, and we might form a mixed chorus in the future or whatever. So I think it's still very early in the process, but we haven't done anything formal about that. I think the society is probably in a better position to answer questions regarding to how many maybe new chapters might have formed that have been formed with the whole idea of being like a mixed chapter, or have a chorus that is mixed, or all female. I haven't seen or heard of anything like that, like in the Northeastern District yet. But like I said, I still think we're fairly new into the whole process.
Maybe Marty will come up with something shorty on his reports.
Well, for NED, that's helpful, Ed. That's really good context. I can give you, like, from what we did when we looked at that specifically around the midwinter convention, when we report to our board, anecdotally, and don't quote me on this, but we have about 682 male choruses, 6 female, and 79 mixed across the society. Those are approximations because this was, again, back in January, and we've since had several chapters and more choruses formed since then. And the only way we know about that is if people register in Member Center, of course, or someone tells us, hey, we got this thing going on, and then we connect them with someone on staff to help them form. So those are the ways that people are engaging with us right now, which was pretty close to what we thought when that chapter chorus option was made available. And one of the things I like to always point out, because people tend to put in Everyone in Harmony as synonymous with opening up membership to all genders. And what we also like to make sure people recognize is that it's about you all choosing what you want your barbershop experience to be. And so the fact that we have 682 male choruses is something I'm very proud of, and something that as I see more choruses form, I recognize that we can add to what we're doing as an organization without subtracting. And so I'm excited about that. The same thing for quartet. So I know that the focus is, especially for this group, more on the chapter and chorus experience. But we recently, in December of last year, started offering more quartet options. Most people that are registered with the society for quartets is because they compete. And so we're like, you know what, there's probably some resources that quartets would want, whether it's learning tracks or access to this newsletter on a regular basis, or quartet coaching. And so we thought through what would be different offerings for, a quartet like Sean's, where they have this type of experience, and then someone who just is really getting started and maybe just really trying to learn how to sing in a quartet. Me personally, I just started singing with Noteworthy, which is a mixed chapter, but that's a big deal for me because it's only like 15 people. And so I feel like, wow, this is way different than a chorus. So we recognize that everybody has these different ways that they come to barbershop. And historically, it has been this particular path of chapter and a lot of competition in some ways. But we know that is not everybody's experience. And so Everyone in Harmony is about providing more options for people so that we can all do some more barbershop.
Let's see. Next, we have Tom. Paul.
Yeah, this is Paul Lepenis from Worcester, Massachusetts. We've got 2 women's chapters, a Sweet Ads and a Harmony Inc. In adjacent communities to us. And I would like to know how many chapters in the NED have inter-chapter relationships with their female counterpart choruses, or what are the resources that could help encourage that?
Is that for me, Tom?
Yeah.
I guess it's just to the NED, I suppose, but to BHS as well. We're all 3 choruses, the 2 women and the men, are about 25 members strong, but we represent 3 different national organizations. Is there encouragement, or is there resources, or is there survey information as to how often and how many other chapters have made inter-chapter relationships with their female counterparts.
Like Lee, do you want to talk about Vocal Revolution? I can kind of, yeah.
I have to unmute to talk about it, but we have struck up a pretty friendly relationship with the Boston Skyline Chorus, based on the fact that we rehearse in the same place, and so we share a set of risers. I mean, we have a set of risers that we let them use, and we've got a pretty cooperative relationship going, and we're putting on shows together, etc. So far so good. But in terms of specific resources, Paul, I don't think there really are any provided by the society that I know of. Glenn, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, we've had interchapters, and people from each go to the other meetings and stuff. So yeah, I would, and it's been great for us, I think. Sounds like you're on the right path to me.
Definitely. And we encourage collaboration all the time. I mean, it's so much better to talk to people who care about the same thing that you do and brainstorm together. It always makes the idea better. So, well, I can't really think off the top of my head what resources would say, hey, go and talk with Sweet Adelines and Harmony Inc. Absolutely. Please do that if that's something you're interested in. You'll never know what you'll find out. And it sounds like you've got a lot of good examples that you could pull from and talk to through the people here.
Well, I guess part of a survey question there for the future might be how many male chapters have female board members at large from adjacent female chapters? Because if you're looking to merge resources, you probably should merge ideas.
Seems like a challenge, Paul, because they are in different organizations than us.
And honestly, Paul, just speaking as a chapter president here in Hershey, Pennsylvania, we feel like although we're in our BHS silo, for us to not reach out to our Harmony Incorporated and Sweet Adeline community, we need to do that. And I feel like it might be a little difficult for the national and international organizations to give any guidance. Nobody knows better than you in your backyard how to leverage those relationships. I would only say that from personal experience, that has enriched our chapter life here in Hershey to reach out to Lansdale, Pennsylvania, Harmony Incorporated, to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Sweet Adelines. We're such a tight community, and now more than ever, community has almost taken a front seat to the music in the current COVID situation. So what better time for you to leverage your local familiarization with the people and players in those chapters. I would say lead, just go all in there in Worcester, make those contacts, bring in your community, regardless of organizational affiliation. We're all just singers and barbershoppers, and we're stronger together than we are apart. So I think your instincts are right, Paul. I think you go for it and lead by example.
Thank you.
Paul, the best way is to have your mother, the founder of Harmony Incorporated, and then marry the director of the Sweet Adeline Chorus.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, so
Mike Mano, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Mano.
In the interest of time, I have 3 hands up, so let's just take all 3, and then we'll do the answers for those 3. So Alan, go ahead. I guess it's 2.
Yeah, if I could. Aaron sort of mentioned in passing the fact that the society has put up the webinar that was done this week on the website. This was a collaboration between 5 musical organizations: Chorus America, National Association of Teachers of Singing. I can't remember the rest. It doesn't matter. Of the 5 who were the sponsors of this thing, BHS was one of them. And number one, I want to tell you how thrilling it was to see BHS at a table with all of those organizations talking about the impact of COVID on singing. I would encourage all of the chapter presidents to go and take the it's 2.5 hours. Take the 2.5 hours and watch the webinar. I've watched 3/4 of it already. It's mind-bending. It's frightening. It's honest. You can draw your own conclusions from it. And it's just, it was great to see Marty sitting in the seat with the other 4 people, socially distanced, being a part of such a momentous thing. The only thing I would pass on, Aaron, and I mentioned this briefly to Donnie, is when that thing got created, I don't know if we waited until the Livewire deadline to publish it, but by the time any of us heard about the webinar, it was already oversubscribed. The limit was 5,000 people. And apparently the limit was hit almost immediately. And my guess is, since it didn't come out in Livewire until too late, that very few barbershoppers sat and heard it as original stuff. And then I do know that several of the organizations that were involved have posted it up on their website already, and it's been there for about 36 hours. So it was good to see that we finally got it up on our website. And I would, again, encourage all of the chapter officers that are on this call to go to the society website now. It's a lot easier to find than it was going through the Chorus America website. But if you want to hear all 2.5 hours, I've given the link to Mike and Ed to get posted on our website. So if you want to do all 2.5 hours, be my guest. But it's important. It is really important stuff for us to know.
Cool. There it is.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, David, do you want last comment?
Getting back to what Paul was talking about, and that is reaching out to female organizations, knowing your reputation and the reputation of the Worcester chapter, and how you in the past have conspired or come together with both of those lady chapters, that you already have a great rapport with them. Why not have a social event and call it your own inter-chapter party? I don't think there's anything that would restrict that, but like you said, there could be some collision at the higher up you get with the national organizations, but at the grassroots level, community level, you've already got an in, and you've done a great job with those female chapters in the Worcester County area.
Thank
Keep
you,
going.
David. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aaron. That was great.
Hey, and
Yes,
Paul, I'm really sorry I called you Tom. I apologize for that. I realized because I was looking at a Tom, I think, and called you Tom, but I see you, Paul.
Okay. In the interest of time, thank you, Erin. You're certainly welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but I know you're probably a very busy lady. So we will not be upset if you have to leave or anything, but thank you for participating. I'm sure anybody who would have any questions that you'd like to ask of Erin, she's easy to get a hold of at Barbershop Harmony Society. And she's very, very responsive when you do email her. So you can probably contact her there. Thank you again, Erin. I appreciate it, and hope to see you soon sometime, not via computer screen.
I hope so too. Thank you, Ed, so much for having me. Virtual hugs. Bye.
Okay, thank you, Erin. Okay, moving on to the consent calendar. All these documents were sent out by Glenn. I hope everybody had a chance to read them. If there's any questions about any of the reports or any things that need to be pulled, Are there any reports that need to be pulled right now? That anybody has any particular questions upon? Let's do that right now.
Ed, this is Alan. Could I just report, please, that I did submit a report?
Oh, sorry. Sorry if I missed that, Alan. I was copying from from August's thing.
No, this was an April report.
Okay.
Yes, Alan did.
Yeah.
Read them all.
Okay. Bruce has a question.
Yeah,
Hey,
I'd
Bruce.
like to hear Sebi expand on what he said in his report about changing the nature of the events. He said, if we keep doing the same thing in the same old way, we're going to keep having the same results. And I wondered what he was getting at. I'd like a little more explanation about that.
Okay, so we will keep the membership report out.
Pull that one now.
Yep. Kevin, you had something?
Yeah, Kevin McGrath with NADIC. I noticed in the chorus director development, there was a comment there about they reached out and got information about directors' compensation in recruiting. And I was wondering if that was information that could be shared with the presidents, chapter presidents.
Okay. Cool. Do we want to, Dan, do you want to answer that or do you want to pull the report?
No, I can share it. I shared it with all of the musical leaders that I had. If somebody told me the best way to get it to chapter presidents, who would I send that to?
I can help you with that, Dan.
Thanks, Glenn.
Here you go.
May I comment briefly on that report of which Dan spoke?
Yes.
So the the report which Dan put together, the format to poll the NED directors to see, it was a compensation survey, so it's designed to be anonymous, but to get a sense of the range of whether people were being compensated at all, and if so, to what degree. And not surprisingly, from my perspective as a relative newcomer, it really spanned the entire spectrum. And what I've seen as I think I'm a district manager too, if that's the right title, or division manager, a district, one of those, that, the presence of a committed, dynamic, effective director seems to me the absolute linchpin to the success of a chorus. And where we've seen that turnover or that pending turnover or that, those challenges seem to me puts choruses kind of on life support, on a real perilous path. So that was the intent, was to try to generate a report that might spur or motivate choruses to take a look at what their compensation practices were so that they might attract and retain people if in fact, and we know people aren't making a living at this, but the idea that there would be some recognition and fair and attempt at fair compensation for people's time and effort. So if we can share that more widely, I think that would be potentially very useful. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Any other reports? I just have one right now.
Okay, this is Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Yeah, just on the governance and bylaws, when we get to that, it's just a very 2-3 sentence request that I have as governance and bylaws person to all the chapters.
Okay, sure. Got it. I'll pull it. Yep. I think that's all we have. So I'm pulling H and O, and we can.
Right, we can pass the rest of them. Accept the rest of them. I'll take a motion to accept the consent calendar with those that are pulled. Further discussion right now?
Did you pull N?
Pull.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He said O, but it was really N.
Oh, N. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I have it backwards on mine. Okay. Yeah, governance bylaws. Gotcha. Okay. Just so
Motion
on,
to,
yeah, motion.
motion to accept the reports. Anybody?
So
I'll move
moved.
that. Danbury.
So moved, Brian O'Leary.
Second.
I'll second that, Gerald from Cape Breton.
Gerald. Any other discussion? Before we actually vote on this, I just want to thank all the officers for submitting some really fine reports this meeting. I think it's necessary for the board to communicate this way, and I hope everybody had a chance to read these things just to understand how much work these gentlemen do for the district. There's no further discussion. Anybody objects to receiving these reports as presented with those two that are pulled? I don't see any objections. Okay, the motion passed, and we'll accept the consent calendar as presented. So let's quickly discuss membership and outreach report.
So raise your hands if you have a question for Sebi, I guess. We can, or does Sebi understand? Does Sebi, did you understand?
I think I have a decent handle on what Bruce was asking. Just because we did some business in between his original question and now, I wouldn't mind him actually repeating the question just so that we could all kind of refresh before I jump in.
Go ahead, Bruce.
So I don't have the report right in front of me, but at one point you were talking about the sense that I had from what you wrote was that if the society or the district continues to operate our events and the things that we do in the same way we have in the past, we're not going to achieve our stated goal of expanding our reach or reaching the people that we think we want to reach. So if you had some ideas about how we might change those things, or if people have been talking about those changes, I'd love to hear about them.
Sure. So first, I will say a lot of what I talk about in that particular paragraph that Glenn has highlighted for everyone who is watching the screen share here. One of the things that I feel is my job is to have my ear to the ground to what our membership is looking for, asking for from their leadership. And really what is important is the district one of the main things the district provides, as I understand it, there are still other services that our district provides for our membership, but one of the main visible things that we provide to our membership is the events. That's kind of the most visible thing, the thing that we congregate at, the thing that, you know, we all can participate in. I'm concerned that we have fallen into, and I know there'll be some pushback down the line on this, but I think that there has been a rut that our events have fallen into. There's a pattern. There's just the way we do things. And I understand that some aspects of the way we do things evolved from a good place. They were ideas that served the membership at the time. And I will say that membership and outreach, my role, membership is obviously serving the membership that we currently have. I think that's a really, really important aspect, and making sure that we're servicing the members we have and keeping them engaged in what our district and what the society and our chapters do. Outreach is looking at members we have never touched yet, members we have never even heard of yet. Outreach is music educators. It's finding those new avenues to growth and touching people through barbershop. So if I look at the way we handle our events, there has been a consistent struggle, I think, and John Englander may either agree or slightly disagree with me, but I believe that there has been a struggle with our events to be profitable. Now, the district's job is not to be a profit-making organization, but the profits we do pull from events does help us put into action and invest in other programs that could make our current membership happier, could make our outreach efforts stronger, could, these kinds of things. And I would basically narrow my concern down to, are the events we are doing being run because we just have a formula that kind of works, except we're experiencing diminishing returns on those? Or are we really taking the time to step back and go, is this event serving our current membership in a way that engages them? Is our suite of events serving our membership in a way that excites them? I will frequently, in my conversations with our actual membership, reference the fact that, and I believe it was the BHS annual report in either, I want to say it was 2017. So the data is a little dated, but at that time, of the new members the district had, 2/3 reported that they came from a member referral, otherwise known as word of mouth. So we're still very much a word of mouth organization. And this is my philosophy on how membership works, is that if we're going to be mainly word of mouth, not that we have to be, but because we currently are, exciting your membership, engaging your membership is one of the key ways that you get them to go out into their local communities and touch other people who are not members and say, hey, quote unquote, hey, you should come do this thing with me. It's called barbershop. So when we look at the event side of things, I have a question of, do we do the same formula we have and expect better returns? Or do we look at what our membership is asking from us, either what they are vocalizing, this is what I want in an event, or what they are silently doing with their dollars, not choosing to pay to come to an event, and, voting with their feet, not choosing to drive or make the trip, or, like I said, those things that are key to events being profitable, which, like I said, profit only helps us invest further down the line. So I have a concern about that. There's more work for us to be done. I want to present that concern to our delegates, and I want to, of course, engage with our delegates because they represent our chapters on, this is anecdotal. How do we get better information so that we, as your leadership, can make better informed decisions?
In the interest of time,
Sean's had his hand raised for a little bit. I think it's probably.
Yeah, I only just wanted to echo Sebi and address Bruce. I really feel like Sebi's concern was just the definition of insanity, maybe, doing what we've always done, but expecting different results. I really felt it as that. I took it as that and to heart, as in my chapter in my district, to continually challenge ourselves to look outside the box. And each year, like for instance, for chapter show promotion, for me, we have a team that has to bring at least 1 to 3 new promotion ideas. And this year, I reached out to Alan Lampson at Silk City Chorus and said, Alan, you've got one of the best ad books in the society. We don't even have an ad book. And we're doing okay, but we want to do better. So next year we need to add a great ad book. So Sebi's challenge really was for me just to avoid that, running into that definition of insanity of doing what we've done and expecting either the same or better results. Sometimes we can, but I think it's always up to us and our team to find new ways to reach and connect and engage new audiences. So here to that.
Well, and I think especially when we come back from the COVID-19 era that we're in, we're going to have to pay a lot of attention to, as we pick up the forms, make sure that we pick up the ones that are serving us.
You're absolutely right, Bruce. No kidding. And let's continue to work now so when the doors open up again, we're ready to go. We're ready to meet the need. Way to go, Bruce.
Okay. Was that satisfied? Are you satisfied with your answer, Bruce?
Oh, absolutely. I really appreciate the discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Sebi. Brian, you wanted to say something really quick about governance and bylaws.
yes, the society over the last year and a half or 2 years has made changes in the governance and bylaws for the society, for the district, and also for chapters. And they call them the standard bylaws, standard district bylaws, standard chapter bylaws. All of those are, well, the chapter stuff and the district stuff is on the website. They've all been brought up into correspondence with gender neutral terminology, and some things that we've had before have been eliminated. Other things have been added in. I'm not going to take the time to go through it because it can be lengthy. What I would ask you to, would urge you to do is take your chapter bylaws that you have now and take a copy of the standard chapter bylaws that's on the website and make sure there's no contradictions. As long as there's no contradictions, you're okay. But if there's some contradictions or something that has to be changed, then you need to change it, okay? We did this with the district last year and we're in correspondence with the district now. But if these days that people want to litigate about what kind of chewing gum that you want and so on and so forth, we need to be sure, you know, that our slate is clean. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll accept a motion to accept now Brian's report and also Ebsebi's report. Add it to the consent calendar.
So move.
What's your name? Second.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Who was the second? I didn't get the word. Pick a name.
Brian.
Okay, gotcha.
Hearing no discussion. All in favor, or seeing no objections, I'll declare the motion passed. We can move on. Thank you, gentlemen. We're under old business now, right, Glenn?
Yes, we're under old business.
Okay. John, do you want to say something about the budget for 2020 as it now stands?
Sure. Yeah, we approved the district budget, and it's worth about what the paper it's written on at this point. We have gotten through 4 months of the year and basically done none of the things that we had intended to do. So the results, actually, I will say that there are many reasons why our cancellation of events is unfortunate. At this point, financial is not one of them. Both of the contests in the spring typically cost us more to run than we take in. In the 2 events in August, one of them's typically break even and the other one hopefully is, but usually runs a small deficit. So from a financial perspective, we actually have done well by not having the contest. Don't mistake that from my saying we shouldn't. I think our events are very important, but as a short-term thing, it's actually helped our finances a little bit. We probably will touch on it a little bit later what the status of fall convention is. That typically is our one convention where we actually help fund the others. And if we are able to do that, I think that it will be a good thing, assuming we can do it safely and responsibly. But I think basically our budget for the year right now consists of dues income, administrative costs, and hopefully funding a fall convention. That's all I have for now.
There's a question from Tom.
Yeah, my question, John, is that my observation is that being well, even in normal times, organizations sometimes will visit a budget mid-year these are unprecedented times. Does it make sense to visit the budget mid-year, halfway through, when the spring is behind us and there's knowledge at least of what we'll attempt to do in the fall to construct a revised budget?
Well, yes, we have not constructed a new official budget. We are constant, the way I look at it is that generally, once a budget is set, you don't want to change the budget. You may make forecasts that show how you're going to deviate from that. As you suggest, the one time where I would create a new budget would be in an extremely unprecedented time such as this. The information that would go into that is constantly being looked at and revised. We have put together a tentative budget for the fall convention based on our current tentative plans. So we haven't officially decided to create a new budget for that, but we certainly could.
Any other questions of John? If not, we'd like to move on. Okay, I'd like to move on to Paul Arnone. I'd like him to talk a little bit, just very briefly, about what's happened with our fall convention and probably give you some updates on what we've done since our last meeting. So, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Hello to you all. Glad to be here with you. Under these kinds of circumstances, as you know, we are not having a fall convention in Canada this year. That was a bit of a sucker punch, even though most of us on the board expected something like that. For those of you that don't know, it was pulled because the Premier of New Brunswick sent out an edict saying that there would be no large gatherings, no concerts of any kind until after December. So of course we couldn't follow through on our timing and whatever else. I asked President Ed for just a few minutes just to be sure that you delegates and all the rest of the members of the district actually know how much work and effort was done by a committee of 13 that have been working for the past 7 months on that convention. And we were making great strides. We have some wonderful planning. We have some good things in place and some good contacts made. It is my hope that sometime down the line, with the wisdom of the district, we will indeed have a convention there in New Brunswick. Having said that, that's just a personal observation. Having said that, we have been working recently on getting approvals, etc., for having a convention in end of October, early November. Would probably be somewhere here on the Cape, Cape Cod. Don't know yet where that falls into place. That's something that's fairly new. We don't know what the logistics are of all of that yet, or the cost factors, etc. So we need to look long and hard at that. We will, as we have in the past, keep you exceedingly up to date as these items happen. So I don't have anything else beyond that, Ed. I just want to be sure that the committee members knew how much I thought of them personally and how much I appreciated all their efforts.
Yes, thank you, Paul. Paul was the chairman of the convention, really, for St. John, and has done a tremendous job in hoarding us all together, basically, and keeping us on task. We had a great convention planned, and fortunately for us, there is an opportunity for next fall in 2021 to return to St. John. So we're sort of looking forward to that. So that's on the table right now. And as for the district convention for this fall, after polling the board and looking at our options, there was some sentiment that said we should not cancel the convention totally, and if we could possibly have it in the fall, somewhere here back in the States, that we should pursue it. And Bob Bradley has been hard at work trying to locate various venues and sites for us to have our convention. It's under extremely difficult times to do this kind of stuff because a lot of the people that we normally deal with are either not working or are willing to schedule that far out in advance. But we have an option right now. The board has approved this in a vote that was taken earlier this week, that we will move our fall convention to Hyannis out in Cape Cod. It'll be the following week after our normal convention, so it's actually the 30th to the 1st, 30th October to the 1st of November, if I remember right. Bob, did you want to add anything to that really briefly?
Yeah, can you hear me yet? Is this?
Yes.
Okay. We have a contract with the Hyannis Convention Center. The people in the eastern districts would recognize that as where we had the contest last year, I believe, for the eastern choruses. They could fit up to 800 people in their ballroom. For those of you who haven't been there, the rooms, the ballroom, the warm-up rooms are all under one roof. And it seemed to work out quite well for us. And they were willing at this short notice to be able to work with us. The entire contract has 3, I think, or 4 different areas where, because of the COVID virus, we can opt out and without penalty. And also I'm working on grants from the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce, which we were able to get last year. And hopefully we'll be able to secure some grants for this year's contest also up there, which would help us financially. So that's where we'll be. It's October 30th, 31st, and November 1st. Kind of interesting way to spend Halloween. And we hope we'll have, we'll bring candy for everybody. But that'll be our division contests and also our district contest. So all the divisions will be able to compete for the divisions, VLQ contests, the mixed contests, and the district contest also. Everything will be in one. Plus the seniors, we had to pick our chorus. Well, Alan would speak to the contest and judging on that. But it's I believe it's a great location, and it'll work for us.
Great. Thank you, Bob. And I want to thank Bob for all the hard work he's done trying to locate something. We didn't want to give up on it just yet, but I want everyone to understand that a lot of the ability of us to hold a convention this fall, a lot of the aspects are really out of our control, and we're going to be bound to what the local governments say and what the mandates are, and whether or not our members and chapters and performing ensembles, whether they be quartets or choruses, feel that they're able to rehearse at a level that would make them feel comfortable to put on a good performance for us in this fall. So there's a lot of unknowns right here, but I think it's important for us to plan as if we're going to have this contest, unless we're really told differently, either by our competitors, members, or local government agencies and municipalities that will prevent us from doing this. So I just wanted to make sure the delegates can take that back to their chapters. We'll be getting out some information on all of this shortly on our website. We do have some time since our convention is the last weekend in the fall for the general contest sessions. So we can wait probably a month or 2 before we have to make a hard decision one way or the other. But for right now, I know a lot of chapters can't even meet and can't even rehearse. Sure, a lot of quartets can't do the same. So hopefully things will change and maybe we can get together this fall. So that's where we stand there. Any questions from the delegates?
Murray had his hand up.
Murray.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the province of New Brunswick has the lowest COVID-19 rate in Canada. They've only had 122 cases. They haven't had a new one in over 2 weeks. And they have done that by keeping the border closed. They're not letting anybody in or out except their own people, and it's worked. So I say all good for them. I'm sorry we won't be there, but I think they're doing the right thing.
Thank you, Murray. Any other questions?
Ed, can I just throw out that obviously this is all contingent on the local government, as you said, and taking into consideration that report that Alan was speaking about that has just come out, and we'll go by whatever guidelines are set forward for us.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. Very quickly, I don't know if Scott's on the call tonight. Scott Damaratius. I know Alan Briand is not on the call tonight.
Yeah, Scott was.
Scott, is he still
I'm
here?
Yes.
Very briefly, tell us what's happening with HX Camp, mainly for 2021.
Yep. So for HX Camp 2021, we are going to go with the faculty that we put together for 2020. We're launching a lot of plans that we had to move them forward and have more time to actually revise them further. So should be a very successful camp with plenty of time to put together, the chances of having a good one. The one issue that was, of course, is when the schools get back into session so we can, get an early start at it. But should be good. The faculty we're working on getting, finalized. Once we have the date, then we can, finish that off. Will be a good faculty to work with. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Just speaking for Alan and HCNE for this year, of course, it was canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we are starting to put together, and we'll start working on a lot of what's going to happen for HCNE in 2020 is going to have to wait until our election of officers. So we'll have a new vice president of music and performance coming on board for 2021. So we have plenty of time for that. So we really have nothing to say other than that, other than it was canceled for this year. But to thank Alan for the work and putting that together as much as he did this year for 2020. I think next up is a quick report from David Patterson on the status of Leadership Academy for 2020. Am I right?
Yeah, there were a couple of questions. I mean, David had, I guess, maybe a question on this, and so did Jim Brewer.
Yeah, I'd like for Scott to announce the change in the leadership for HX Camp.
Yes. So Andrea Bossi is the HX Camp coordinator, and we're very confident she's going to do a wonderful job. She's already put a lot of work into plans and working with the team. The team has a new structure that she's finalizing, and it's going to be a very nice program that she'll put together.
Jim? Here, there you go, Jim.
Yeah. I had a question on a previous report. I heard a number of 800 for the capacity of the auditorium. Is that big enough? What's our past history been at at district, but this is now both district and division. Is 800 really enough?
Yeah, Jim, I'll answer that. The historical A number for a district convention is typically around 680. I think, require something that holds 800. Given that the overlap between division and district is so great, that should be plenty. And I suspect if we are able to hold it, there will still be some members who personally are not comfortable going. So I would anticipate that we'd probably have a slightly lower than normal. So yes, that should be plenty, so long as we don't have to stand 6 feet apart.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on.
Okay, I guess that's me.
Yep, Dave. I'm sorry.
Okay, planning for the Leadership Academy for 2020. Planning is moving forward to conduct a virtual and online Leadership Academy this year. The event will be divided into 2 sections, chapter leadership and chapter operations. On the chapter leadership side, we have a crackerjack faculty lined up. To all the chapter presidents attending this meeting, you will recall that earlier this year, I emailed you and asked for input as to what chapter leadership classes we should offer at this year's Leadership Academy. Of the district's 44 chapters, I received 21 responses with 113 specific picks. As a result of this survey, the classes we will be running are the classes which garnered the most picks. Now, with the advent of the restrictions which are in place, now that we'll be conducting an online Leadership Academy, I'm going to send out that survey again to all 23 chapter presidents who did not respond to the first survey. Now that all the usual reasons and excuses for not attending Leadership Academy have been removed, I certainly hope to get a few more responses. The current plan is to schedule the chapter leadership classes to run on Sunday evenings beginning in August. On the operations side, we have excellent talent lined up to run the classes. We'll be running classes, this again is on the operations side, for chapter presidents, chapter secretaries, chapter treasurers, youth in harmony, and a tentative class on chapter compliance filings, and a tentative class on Website Development 101. On the advice of several wise people, we'll be running these operations classes in November. This is following chapter elections, and the 2021 chapter boards should be in place. Please plan to attend. Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll be getting more information out as plans.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Thank you, David. Any questions on that at all? If not, let's move on to the next item. I think we're under new business now.
So, item 18.
Yes. One item of business that we've always taken care of at HOD meetings, especially the first one of the year. I know this is, we're in the 5th month of the year, so this is a little bit late, but we'd like to formally install the officers. And I've asked past district president, Murray Phillips, he's also past society board member, current chairman of the society's nomination committee, to do a formal installation of the officers for the Northeastern District. So Murray.
Thank you very much, President Ed. It's my pleasure to install the NED board for 2020. I was fortunate to be able to work with on the 2019 NED nominating committee with past presidents Michael Klein and Paul Arnone and chapter president Andre Welland to find the members for the 2020 board. And we were fortunate that most of the members of the previous board agreed to continue in their positions. We asked the Society Board for a special dispensation for President Ed Fritzen to be able to serve for a third term. Now, this was approved, and the Society Board thought it was such a good idea, they changed the bylaws, and now anyone can run for a third term. So your 2020 board finds itself in a set of very unique circumstances. This will be a year that requires special actions and communication with our members and chapters, and the future is uncertain, and we need to encourage everyone to stay engaged. So on behalf of the members, it's my honor to install the officers for 2020. I ask you, as members of the 2020 board, to pledge to keep our district moving ahead during this difficult time and to fulfill your duties to the best of your abilities. When I call your name, please unmute yourself and say, "I do." Vice President, Youth and Harmony, Scott Damaricius.
I do.
In absentia, Alan Briand, Vice President, Music and Performance, and on his behalf, I'll say he will. Membership and Outreach, Sebi Massa.
I do.
Vice President, Marketing and Public Relations, Steve Salomon.
I do.
Vice President, Events, Robert Bradley.
I do.
Vice President, Contests and Judging, Alan Lamson.
I do.
Vice President, Chorus Director Development, Don Falcone.
I do.
Vice President, Chapter Support and Leadership Training, David Patterson.
I do.
He found the unmute, yay. Treasurer, John Englander.
I do.
Secretary, Glenn McElhoe.
I do.
Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Close enough, McElhoe. Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. Executive Vice President for his third year, Mike Mano.
I do.
And President, Ed Fritzen.
I do.
So on behalf of the Board of the Society and President Dick Powell, I declare the Board of the Northeast District for 20.
Oh, wait.
Excuse me, Murray?
Wait, sorry. Wait. I think it was me. Hang on. All right, there we go. Sorry, Murray. Murray.
Yes.
Sorry, I missed you. Just as you were doing the big speech.
Oh, okay. On behalf of the Society Board and President Dick Powell, I declare the board for the Northeastern District for 2020 installed. I didn't mention your immediate past president, who is somewhat removed because he is not elected and he always fills a great position. That's Paul Arnone.
I do.
I thought you would.
Way to
Thank
go,
you.
Paul.
Yes. Thank you, Murray.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much, and especially for those words of wisdom. I just want the delegates to know, and the rest of the district to know, that I am extremely fortunate to have such hardworking and dedicated individuals to serve on the board of directors. It makes my job very easy. These guys work tirelessly behind the scenes, and they tell me everything that's going on. I feel like I'm informed, and a lot of the times I just got to sit back and say, okay, that I have the information I need to make decisions, but I can't do the work without these guys. And I just want everybody to realize how fortunate we are in the Northeastern District to have such a good board of directors. So I look forward to finishing off the year this year. This is it for me. I want you to know I've done my 3 terms now, and I'm looking forward to becoming an immediate past president. I think that's probably one of my goals I might have put in my report. That's my biggest goal for this year, to become immediate past president for 2021. So
I recommend it highly.
Yes. So again, thank you for everybody on the board, and thanks to the delegates. Okay. Next up.
Yep. Here, Dick, Richard, Rebecca, you can talk just real quick.
Yeah, I'm very interested in knowing how many chapters have been meeting on a weekly basis through Zoom or something. We've been doing it for 4 weeks now with the Green Mountain Chorus. This past week we had 20 members signed up. We can't hear all the parts, but we do go over music.
Let's
learning new stuff.
yeah, let's pick that up at the end. I think there's a
Okay.
spot where we can pull that together.
All right.
Okay.
I see next up on the agenda is the memorandum of understanding with the Barbershop Harmony Society. Some of you might know there's a sort of a new operating model. The districts are considered to be affiliates of the society or subsidiaries to the society, much like our international affiliates are, like BABS and SNOBs and some of the other international barbershop harmony kinds of organizations. They've been operating under this kind of model for years now, where they sign up what they call a memorandum of understanding with the society, and it basically defines what services the society will provide to these organizations, what they can expect, and in return, those organizations do certain events and programs and stuff that benefit the society. The districts have been asked to do this now. This is our second year that we've done this. The 2020 district plan and memorandum of understanding has been submitted to the society. It's currently under review right now, but unfortunately, it's gotten tied up with, and has probably been put on the back burner due to all the emphasis on COVID-19 right now. So I have not heard anything official from the society yet about our 2021 memorandum, but I just wanted everybody to know that we are in compliance with the society and that has been done. So it's basically how we operate. We tell them what our plans are for the year. We tell them this is the kinds of resources we need to be successful for these plans. They say, okay, these are the kind of resources we can provide to you for you to be successful. And in return, we want you to make sure you tell us how successful you are and supply us with things like how many volunteer hours are spent and how the budget goes and all that kind of stuff. So that's been done. And I just wanted to let everybody know about that. So I think that's all I want to say there.
Okay.
For the good of the district. Yes. First thing up on the good of the district, David, would you make the formal announcement?
Yes, earlier this, late in April, got news that Jerry Wistrom needed to step down as Yankee Division Manager. His company, where he is, I believe, the only employee, he's in a consulting situation, and he just cannot find any time to pursue any of his barbershop interests with everything that's going on with the COVID-19 pandemic. I reached out to a longtime friend, someone that I have great faith in, and that's Jim Nolan from the Manchester, Connecticut chapter. In the 2 weeks that he's been Yankee Division Manager, he's been in touch, I believe, with every district, every chapter president in the division. So you better watch out, and you better put Jim Nolan's name on your speed dial, because he's going to be in your back pocket for a long time. Really happy to have Jim on board. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay. If there are any other questions amongst the delegates right now? Now's your chance. We had one earlier we wanted to put here.
Richard, do you want to ask about online rehearsals?
Yes. We've been doing virtual rehearsals for 40 minutes because that's all that Neil had signed up for on Zoom. So this week coming, we're supposed to have a longer rehearsal. So it's just great to be able to see the guys, and I mean, like just seeing you guys was so homebound. I mean, at least I am.
Mm-hmm.
So just wondering what other chapters are doing for weekly rehearsals.
Can maybe we take a poll, like how many of the chapters, if you can open up the participants window, we can just kind of do a yes, no, and just see, you'll see a green yes and just see how many chapters are holding rehearsals through Zoom or have held, let's say 2 rehearsals since the beginning of COVID. And just so we can kind of get maybe a big overview of what's going on.
We had 4.
Yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of green marks. If everyone opens up their.
I don't understand what you're asking of us, Glenn. Where are we
If
marking this?
If your chorus has had say 2 online rehearsals since the beginning of the COVID thing, put a green check so we can kind of get a sense of how many choruses are going online.
Would that be 2? Would that be 2 or more?
Yeah, 2 or more. Yeah, 2 or more. Well, the way I've set it up is after we adjourn the meeting, I'm gonna try an experiment that I've only read about, so hopefully it works. Which is I'm gonna open up breakout rooms and let everybody move around, and you can basically have a cocktail party when you're done. You can move from room to room, and the rooms all have a little topic. And if you want to talk about that topic, you can. If you want to just talk to who's ever there, you can do that. So we'll have a lot of room for some just talking after the meeting, just like we would at a real delegates meeting, hopefully.
Excellent. How's that?
So Richard, that's encouraging, and yeah, let's all talk about our online meetings and what's been working and stuff. I think after the meeting.
Right. Before we adjourn,
Mm-hmm.
if there's no other questions from the delegates, I would like to give Sean Devine just a few minutes. He's been very patient and has sat through this meeting, has offered some very, very good advice to us. I thank him for participating tonight. It's always great to see Sean. So Sean, take it away.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a story and a suggestion. But before I do that, because of this last topic, and by the way, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm using a new microphone because and if we're able to, if you can see me okay? I don't know if the screen sharing is blocking me from you, but I'm just sending a document to Ed Fritzen, and he can distribute this as he sees fit. But it's regarding the last topic of Zoom meetings, and it's a PDF that gives some instruction on how to properly share video and audio via Zoom. We only have our members for a couple of moments on Zoom, and we want to make sure that we add as much value as possible. So Ed, when you get this document, if you're able to maybe send it to your to the proper chair at the district, it might be a document that might be shared with representatives from the chapter. Because we're going to this Zoom format, we should all be sure that we're sharing audio and video the highest possible quality. And there's a few steps in Zoom to ensure that you're doing that correctly. So that might be a document that you want to send. That wasn't what I was going to talk about, but I thought it was worthwhile to mention.
Thanks, John. I got it.
Great. Secondly, I just had a story I wanted to share. It was a very touching thing that happened to me just 2 weeks ago. And I was asked by Ed Fritzen, with the blessing of Kai Atterbridge and Todd Lamson. I appeared in an inter-chapter meeting just 2 Thursdays ago with the Manchester, Connecticut and Concord, Massachusetts chapters, which is actually 3 chapters. I'm sorry, 3 choruses within those 2 chapters. With Silk City Chorus, the men's chorus, Mosaic, the mixed chorus from Manchester, and then, of course, Vocal Revolution. I was so happy to appear, to share a little bit about just what's going on in my chapter in Hershey, Pennsylvania with Harmony Foundation. And I wanted to tell the story about the director, Todd Lamson, asked if I'd be willing to sing a song, and all of the attendees were going to hit mute. And I would sing a song that they all apparently knew. And all of you might know this song as well. It's the song What a Wonderful World, of course, made famous by Louis Armstrong. And the arrangement was done by a very famous NED longtime member and the original director of the Concord chapter, Bob Long. And Todd said, hey, would you be willing to sing the lead part to What a Wonderful World? And the rest of us will mute and we'll get to sing along with you. And at first I thought, this is going to be weird. I don't know if I want to do that, but I trusted Todd as I do, and Kai, and I blew the pitch here, and I went in and I started to sing What a Wonderful World. And I had to just have faith that I was going to send that lead line out there, and that everybody in their own time on their own computers were going to harmonize together with me. And by the second verse, I needed to collect myself. It was a really emotional exchange. I will always remember May of 2020 during the COVID-19 situation where I sang What a Wonderful World via Zoom with about 100 barber shoppers from the Northeastern District, and everybody was harmonizing with me. It was a really emotional exchange, and it took me a little while to shake it off, but that's kind of where we're at right now. There's a lot of faith that's going on right now that if you watch this webinar, there's some sobering details there. We just don't know what's going to happen to the next time we might be able to gather together. But right now, we ask you to just have faith, have faith that you're going to send your voice out there and someone's going to grab onto it and harmonize. Have faith that we're going to be able to gather again soon. Of course, we're going to take into account all of the local and state and federal guidelines for travel and gathering. But as soon as we're going to be together again, it's going to happen, and we're going to be able to gather. And my message right now on behalf of Harmony Foundation is we have this term in fundraising called faith gifts. And during this time, every gift is a faith gift. With all of the programs that are being canceled, all the events that are being canceled, we just want to thank you for your continued support of Harmony Foundation. We want to continue to just ask you to renew that gift, continue to give to Harmony Foundation, because someday, based off our faith, those doors are going to open, those programs are going to be alive and well, those youth, those educational, those outreach programs. And if we continue to fund and give during this time, we're going to be able to be in a great position to get 1 year ahead of those granting opportunities, those scholarship opportunities. And when we're able to gather together again, when those programs are going to be able to be held again, we're going to be in a great position as a foundation, as a district, as a Barbershop Harmony Society to provide the funding and the nurturing to those programs, those life-changing programs. So I just say thank you for your time. I just ask you to continue to have faith, and I sure hope we can gather again soon to put our voices together to create harmony. And it's pretty emotional to think about when that's going to happen again and what that's going to feel like. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your support, and I sure hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you, Sean. I for one, again, thank you for participating tonight. I long for the day that we can all get back together again, and I hope that I have the opportunity to sing with you in person. What a Wonderful World.
Yes, sir.
I'm working on it, so between now and then, and I look forward to that time. So, is there any other?
Two hands raised right now. Alan Lamson.
Unmute myself first, that helps. Just for those that are interested, we've had the discussion about the plans for what we hope we can do with the fall convention. Just so you all know, everybody that's involved is also thinking about what happens if we don't have a fall convention, because we're clearly not going to wait until that decision is made to start putting plans together. So I just wanted to let the chapters know, because this is of impact to you. If there is no fall NED convention, we all know we just won't have any district champions. We won't have any division champions in 2020. It'll just be a blip in the records, which will be really interesting. However, For those of you who understand the parts of the fall convention, there are two things that happen there that have a longer term impact. One is, besides selecting our district chorus champion, we also have a contest to determine who our representative is to international for the Northeastern District. Because Los Angeles was canceled, last year's representative, which was Vocal Revolution, will be invited to go to Cleveland for the International Convention. If we do not hold a fall convention, just so you know, my understanding is that will be across all the districts, that will be the only invitations to Cleveland, will be from the 2019 fall conventions. So just so everybody's aware. The second thing, which is also important, is that's also the convention at which we select our representative senior district quartet to go to the international competition at Midwinter, which is this year in January in New York. And we all know how badly this virus has hit New York. So if, I know probably Aaron's not on the call anymore, but I know that is an issue that is being studied and considered by the society. If there is a midwinter convention, whether it's in New York or maybe New Brunswick, because they have very few cases of COVID virus, they will have the seniors contest. And just so everybody knows, and you can tell any senior quartets in your chorus, that those representatives will most likely be selected in the same manner we select youth quartets, which will be by video qualification. So if you're in a senior quartet, or if you have a senior quartet that you knew would be part of this in your chapter, please let them know. Make sure that they stay apprised of what's going on. We will get information out as soon as we can, but they should be thinking about that. So just so you know, those are longer term consequences that are still under study. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I just wanted to explain a little bit my response on the virtual rehearsals. We haven't had any virtual rehearsals, but we're looking into it. The question about Zoom, though, we've had 3 Zoom meetings, 3 chapter meetings and 1 committee meeting, and we're learning it like we're doing here tonight, and it's working out very well. So we are investigating, and I'd like to find out more about the ability to do a music education or rehearsal, or a percentage of what you would do as a rehearsal on the Zoom. So I just want to throw that out there. We are active on Zoom, and I think there are other chapters, maybe Doug Schofield could speak to that are active on Zoom in our Sunrise division.
Thank you, Gerald.
Bruce?
Just very quickly, why did we decide to meet at 7 o'clock on a Friday night? And is there another night that we could meet instead of Friday night?
It's a good question. We normally meet at another district kind of event, whether it's Harmony College Northeast in the summertime or district convention in the springtime. I just felt that I was kind of hoping to possibly do it like last weekend, which would have been the weekend of our Western Regional in Lake George, so people would have been available anyway. I have no other reason for picking a Friday evening. I thought people would be available. If it's a bad choice, please let me know, and we can certainly try to do better the next time. This is the first for all of us. I am encouraged with the amount of participation we've had in this meeting. This is probably one of the biggest HOD meetings we've had. And I'm thinking that due to expenses and things like that, that this might be the way of the future. And we might be doing a lot more HOD meetings like this in the future. But thank you for your concern. And if you have other times, Sunday nights would have been another type, but I try to keep my Sunday evenings open for other society-wide teleconferences that I might be involved with, so I would not be available. So
I appreciated the Friday night so that wouldn't miss those chapter meetings happening Monday through Thursday, Ed.
I just want to say that if Bruce has somewhere else to go on Friday, I want to know where, because I want to have someplace to go too.
Right on.
Okay. Paul, you had your hand up?
Have a response to the question about Zoom meetings. I participated in 3 Vocal Revolution virtual rehearsals over the last 6 weeks. And the most recent one was one that was most productive. And so I wondered if maybe Dave or Lee would be willing to share a link to the recording of yesterday's rehearsal, the benefit of the district and the divisions and divisions in the district. It was very productive and very instructive and very informative.
Yeah, I'd like to see that as well. So
I'd be happy to do it. And Glenn, why don't I give it to you and you can send it out?
And if I can get it right now, hang on.
Oh, great.
Is that something we could do in the chat after the official meeting is over?
Yeah.
I see there's a motion to adjourn is available. I would do that.
Murray, so moved. We have a
Lee
second?
seconds. Lee Dom seconds.
Seconds.
Okay. Lee, actually, it's not up on Groupinizer yet. Can you give it for me, and I'll post it in the chat. I
will get it.
I can
Yep.
put it in the minutes. Is what I'll do. I'll put it in the minutes if people are looking for it.
Okay, sure will.
Okay.
Murray,
so
I love
Lee
the beard.
and Murray. Gotcha. For adjourn. Okay.
So,
Yep.
I would thank everybody for attending tonight. There was a motion to adjourn. I'm sure somebody seconded it somewhere.
Yep, Lee did.
We did.
There's not going to be any objections to that. So we are adjourned. Again, thanks for attending tonight. And hopefully the next time we'll all be together. If you want to hang out for a while, the directions are on the screen right now.
Yeah.
I'll be here for a few minutes. And if you want to ask me any questions